How's it going, everybody? This is Anthony with VR Game Rankings. Welcome to episode 80 of our daily vlog series. This, of course, is Friday, January 19th. This is the final episode for this week, and let's go ahead and jump into some news. The first story of the day is Oculus Start. Okay, so Oculus Start is a brand new program that Oculus has developed to try to get indie developers up to speed with developing games for various Oculus platforms. Okay, so basically this free program is called Start, and there are three main aspects of this program. Number one, they want to provide access. Number two, they want to provide support. And number three, they want to provide savings. So this is basically designed for small developers to try to help them out in these three key areas. Okay, so the first area is access. So access, what they're going to do here is they want to provide development kits to register developers. It also provides beta access to new tools and new services. Developers can request for an Oculus Rift development kit or an Oculus Go development kit, and when the Santa Cruz prototypes, when those have a development kit available, when that becomes available, they can request for one of those as well. So they will be provided with some hardware support if they are approved into this program. Another big part of it is support, general support. Developers will get 5 support instances from Oculus every single year. And in addition to this, they will be providing VR staffers for members to get some one-on-one support at various Oculus events. So there will be some additional support provided there. And then the third part of it is savings. And the savings part of the program, basically registered members will be allowed to either have a free year of Unity Plus license or a free year of royalty-free Unreal license, whichever platform the developer would like to go on to. So obviously there are going to be a number of requirements and stipulations that developers are going to have to meet to be able to be approved into this Oculus Start program. For example, they cannot have raised more than $10,000 in funding or crowdsourcing. So what that means basically here is they're really trying to target very small development teams that are just getting started and they just need a little bit of extra help to get up and running. And that is what this Oculus Start program is going to provide. So if you have a scrappy team of developers, 3 guys that are working in a garage trying to make the next great VR game, they can apply for this program. They can possibly get some free development kits. They can get additional support. They can go to Oculus events and get some one-on-one support. And they also get this free 1 year with either the Unity license or a royalty-free version of the Unreal license. So it's a pretty good deal for any aspiring developers out there. They should probably go ahead and take a look at how they can possibly get into this program. So that, of course, is Oculus Start. Okay, the second story I have for the day is Jason Rubin tweeted out earlier today. He tweeted out a message reaffirming Oculus and Facebook in their support of the Oculus Rift. And this is in relation to a story that VR Focus had where they basically were saying the story is like, is Facebook giving up on the Oculus Rift or something like that? I forget what the title of the story is, but basically VR Focus kind of has a somewhat clickbaity article about whether or not Facebook is going to give up on the Rift. And I read this article myself personally, and honestly, there really isn't much substance to this. What they basically say is that because of Facebook Spaces is going to be cross-platform, they're allowing HTC Vive players to access Facebook Spaces and make it a cross-platform type of program. Because of that, the theory is that Oculus is moving away from this idea of having their own closed platform, and they're just going to kind of open everything up, and there's no longer going to be this real focus on the Oculus Rift, I guess, is kind of the gist of the story. Really, bottom line here, this is a clickbaity article, and I honestly would not give it much attention other than the fact that Jason Rubin did respond to this article, and he did tweet about it, and his tweets are news because this is Oculus news. So basically what he tweeted was, "You talking about the Oculus I work at?" It's almost like, "What you talking about, Willis? You talking about the Oculus I work at? Rift is still a top priority for all parts of the company. My team has multiple multi-million-dollar Rift titles in the works, our largest investments yet. And Facebook Spaces was designed to be cross-platform from day one. No strategy changed." So Jason Rubin unfortunately took this clickbait, hook, line, and sinker, and decided to respond to it. And now he's giving a ton of attention to VR Focus. Of course, I'm kind of doing the same thing and reporting on this. So VR Focus, congratulations. You got exactly what you were looking for here. But I just wanted to kind of use this tweet as a jumping off point to talk briefly about one of the comments that he does say here, which is, "My team has multiple multi-million-dollar Rift titles in the works, our largest investments yet." Okay, so which titles do they have in the works? Obviously, we know about the Marvel Powers United VR, and this is probably one of the titles that he's considering as a multi-million-dollar Rift title. Not so much in that they're paying millions upon millions of dollars to Sanzaru Games to make this, although I'm sure it probably costs at least a couple $1,000,000 or something. They are using the Robo Recall engine. I'm not sure if they have to pay money to Epic for that, or if that was part of the original deal that they did for Robo Recall. And then obviously a big portion of the money is simply going for the Marvel license. So I'm sure that cost a pretty penny. And so I'm guessing that is one of these multiple multi-million-dollar Rift titles. Another one, of course, is the Respawn Entertainment title, which we know is pretty far off into the future, but Oculus did work out a deal with Respawn Entertainment. This was before they were acquired by Electronic Arts, and this deal is still in effect, so they still will get a Respawn Entertainment VR game, but it's probably not coming until 2019. That, he says, our largest investments yet. That is probably a very, very large investment. That is one of them there. But we don't know of anything else. And I think it kind of would be a good idea if Oculus could maybe come out with a couple of announcements in the near future, because things are kind of quiet on the Western front. I've spoken about this before, that there really isn't a ton of major VR games that are coming in this first half of 2018 that we can really point to. I mean, obviously, the Marvel Powers United VR should be coming out sometime in the first half of 2018, although we have no date whatsoever for that, and that's kind of interesting that we haven't heard anything about that. And then, of course, we do have Valve, of course, has their 3 secret titles, and eventually you would think one of those would see the light of day, and it should be able to work on the Oculus Rift, no problem. And then we have the Half-Life VR mod that we're waiting on as well, which should also work on the Oculus Rift without much trouble. But other than that, it's kind of quiet. I mean, Budget Cuts is supposedly going to have their game out in the relatively near future. There is that. There is Apex Construct, which is coming, I believe, in March to the Oculus Rift platform as well. So it is a little bit quiet, though, and I kind of would like it if Oculus could maybe let us in on some of these secrets. What are some of these other games that they have in the works? And he does say, look, Facebook Spaces, that was designed to be cross-platform from the very beginning, that none of their strategy has changed. Everything is normal. So basically what we have here is much ado about nothing. Once again, this is a clickbaity article. And on a light news day, I'm going to report on Jason Rubin's tweet because it did hit the Oculus subreddit and was at that top of the subreddit as one of the bigger stories of the day. Okay, we do have a couple of games that have been announced very recently that I'm going to mention right now, and I'll go ahead and get into the first one. The first one is Tanks VR, and Tanks VR is going to be coming to Steam in late February. This game is being developed by Tanks VR. Yeah, so they have the same exact name. The developer is Tanks VR. The game is Tanks VR, and this is coming in late February. It is a multiplayer tank game that is going to support up to 10 players, set on the backdrop of World War II. Now, when I first heard about this game, like just seeing the story title about Tanks VR set in World War II multiplayer, like I initially thought immediately of Iron Wolf VR. Now, in Iron Wolf VR, you're in a submarine, and it is a multiplayer game where several people work together to man the submarine and do what they need to do to try to take out the enemy. And I kind of thought, oh, Tanks VR, I wonder if this is going to be like a 2-person team inside the tank, a 3-person team. You know, you have one guy driving the tank, you got one guy operating the turret, you got one gunner guy that's sticking his head out of the top. You know, I'm not sure how exactly all that works, but I kind of thought, oh, that's what this is going to be. But no, actually, that isn't what this is going to be. Each individual player has their own tank. And so you basically have 4 controls that you're working with. You have your tank controls in terms of your tire tread and your speed, and then you have the control of the turret, and then obviously the ability to fire your ammo at the other tanks. And so it's going to be this kind of death match that is going to take place with kind of World War II as a backdrop. And I've seen some videos on this. I've seen some screenshots on it. The game looks relatively basic, not a ton that's going on here, not incredibly detailed environments. This is obviously an indie developer. This does look kind of cool, though. I really hope that the price for this game is relatively low. So, I mean, anytime you have a multiplayer game, you do have to worry about the multiplayer base for the game. And so I'm hoping that the price for this game is really low. Hopefully it has a really high fun factor, and it's just kind of one of these games that you can jump in and you're driving your tank around this war-torn scene from World War II, and you're blasting other players, and 10 total tanks are out there. So supposedly this game is coming in late February, so we'll definitely keep our eyes on this game and see what kind of price it debuts with and what are the early reviews on the game. Another new VR game that has been talked about recently is Scraper. Okay, Scraper is an Oculus Rift exclusive. Now, we don't know if this is a relatively short timed exclusive, maybe like a 30-day kind of exclusive or a 45-day exclusive, or if this is going to be a longer term exclusive. But Upload VR had an article about this game. This game is being developed by Labrodeck Studios, which is based out of Long Island. And there is a very brief trailer for the game that Upload VR featured on their website. And there is also some initial screenshots on the actual website for the game. It does look relatively early in development, but supposedly this game is going to be arriving at some point in the second quarter of this year for the Oculus Rift. Now, this is going to be an episodic game, somewhat similar to maybe the Exorcist VR, the Exorcist Legion VR. It's going to be episodic in that type of way where content will be coming in chunks, and the first chunk of content will be coming sometime in the second quarter for the Oculus Rift. The game is set in New Austin in the 2070s, in a world which most of the planet's population has coalesced in these gigantic megacities with skyscrapers that reach for the heavens. And basically that's where the name of this game comes from, Scraper, in relation to skyscrapers. And so each episodic chapter will feature a specific building that you'll be attempting to take back from the Humech forces that are in control. It's kind of this, post-apocalyptic, dystopian kind of a future with an oppressive government that is controlling things. And so you're trying to take back these skyscrapers slowly but surely, and each episodic chunk of the game is going to feature kind of a new building that you're going to have to take back. Now, Ryder Windham, he's a writer that has worked on a number of Star Wars novels, also various Star Wars comic books and some other things like that. To his credit, he is going to be releasing a prequel novel for this game world, which is going to be called Scraper: The Rise of Cypher. And this prequel novel should be available later this month. So there is kind of this multimedia thing going on with this game, with a novel, and then, of course, obviously the game as well. Once again, we don't know if this is a long-term Oculus exclusive or if it's just going to be a relatively short exclusivity window and then quickly bounce over to Steam as well. Looking at the video and the screenshots, not a lot to go on here. We really don't know anything about Labradex Studios, and this is kind of one of the situations that we're in with a lot of these VR games, and me especially in VR game rankings. It's very difficult because you have these big games, like Marvel Powers United VR. You have these big games like The Impatient, which is coming out next week, that we're very excited for PlayStation VR, coming from Supermassive Games. You have these big games like that, and obviously I know that absolutely we have to cover these games. These are key games. And then on the other end of the spectrum, you have so many tiny little games like Tanks VR and like this game Scraper that are coming from, unknown developers, unheard of developers. A lot of these are their very first projects. And the thing about it is some of these games are going to step up to the plate and be really cool and exciting. And just because it's an unknown developer doesn't mean that they can't create a killer game. We've seen this repeatedly in VR. There's been a lot of great games that have come completely out of the woodwork from totally unknown developers. But many of these games can also be complete and utter duds. And so it's very hard to kind of get a feel for this, and you really have to kind of be a detective and kind of scrape at all the available information and try to see what's going on. Now, I'm not too sure about Tanks VR or this game Scraper, whether or not they're actually going to be games we're really going to be interested in. But that's kind of the dilemma that we're in now in the PC VR industry, more so on the PC VR side, not so much with PlayStation VR. PlayStation VR being a huge platform that is sponsored by Sony with a lot of great developers. You're going to get some bigger, well-known games there. PC VR is a little bit sketchy right now in the year 2018, with, I think, a lot of AAA companies maybe backing off VR a little bit for now and taking more of a little bit of a wait-and-see approach. Okay, the next story we want to jump into is Next VR. So I've talked about Next VR a couple of times. I've talked about Intel. Now this goes back to basically live video events, and eventually this is going to have to be a key category for the VR industry. If we really want VR to become incredibly mainstream, this is going to have to happen. We remember the Nintendo guy from Nintendo France doesn't think VR headsets are going to become mainstream. Well, for them to become mainstream, it has to broaden. It has to appeal to a much larger group of consumers out there. And I think high quality sports content in VR, maybe concerts in VR, live performances in VR, is something that could possibly get your average Joe Walmart interested in donning a VR headset. Some of these people are not gamers. What about your soccer moms? How are we going to get headsets on your average soccer mom. Not a VR gamer, but maybe if there's a concert that's in VR or a particular sporting event or the Olympics or whatever it happens to be, that could possibly bridge the gap. And so that's why I'm interested in stuff like Next VR. And the reason I'm bringing this up is they did have a booth at CES and they did show off some interesting things at CES, and I wanted to cover this real quick. Okay, so basically they had three major things that they wanted to talk about at CES. Number one is eventually they are going to gradually support full freedom of movement, and this is basically 6 degrees of freedom. So whatever technology that they're using right now, it does not offer that, but they hope to integrate that into the near future. So hopefully you'll be able to lean in, move left, move right, forward, back, up and down, 6 degrees of freedom to be able to watch these VR experiences, but also have some agency to be able to move around a little bit. So that's obviously the first thing there. Number two is they're going to begin streaming the WWE in VR. Now, I'm not really into the wrestling thing, but it is incredibly popular. So this is good news. I mean, anything that can come into VR and add additional acceptance from mass market consumers is definitely a valuable thing. And then the third thing, the thing that I'm mostly interested in, is there is going to be a bump up in resolution. They're probably going to be using new cameras, new technology, and they hope to considerably bump up their resolution and improve the resolution, because that's the big problem right now when it comes to a lot of these VR sporting events. It's just so chunky, it's so blocky. Yeah, you're getting this VR view of the action, but it doesn't really live up to the hype because it's just so blurry, chunky, and it's just not high resolution. So hopefully that is going to be fixed at some point this year, at least for Next VR. And Ian Hamilton of Upload VR, he got a demo of this, and he tried some segments of Monster Jam from the Fox Sports channel in VR. Now, apparently this content is already available on their normal Next VR app, but he was able to try a higher resolution version, a sample of higher resolution, and he demonstrated it. I mean, he demoed it on a Samsung Odyssey headset, which obviously has the 1440 by 1600 resolution. This, of course, is the same resolution for the HTC Vive Pro that's going to be coming sometime, hopefully late March, I guess. We still haven't heard any kind of date on that. But basically, Ian Hamilton, he was saying that his sense of presence was really heightened by this increase in resolution, that the monster truck really popped out from the backgrounds, and that as these trucks were driving around, they're kicking up dirt and dust into the air, and he noticed that there was much more detail that was visible in the dust and dirt that was being kicked up. So this new high resolution, that is a very good idea. But honestly, one of the biggest things about this article altogether is the fact that I had no idea. So this guy, he demoed it on a Samsung Odyssey headset, and I was like, wait a minute. Do the Microsoft mixed reality headsets support Next VR? Because the Oculus Rift doesn't support it. The HTC Vive doesn't support it. You can't get Next VR on Steam. You can't get it on the Oculus Store. And this guy demoed it on a Samsung Odyssey. So I did a quick little Google search, and I guess this is something I never heard of. Yes, the Microsoft mixed reality headsets do have a Next VR app. There is a Next VR app that you can get for these headsets. And I'm very curious, any of you guys out there that has a Microsoft mixed reality headset, please, one of you guys download this app, try it out. I'm curious as to the experience, because up until this point, the only way that you can get Next VR, as far as I know, is you get it on the Gear VR, maybe you get it on Daydream, but it's pretty much been a phone thing. Now, I know there is a Next VR app now that's on PlayStation VR, so you can actually sample this on PlayStation VR, but you're not going to see this higher resolution, of course, on the PlayStation VR. So once they actually get this higher resolution into their available content, I don't know. Maybe these mixed reality headsets are a little bit more interesting now that they are supporting this. Of course, the Olympics is being done in VR by NBC here in the USA. NBC is going to have a special app that you can get for your Gear VR. I'm not sure if it's available for Daydream as well, but there is an app for Gear VR where you could watch some Olympic events in VR. And are we going to get something like that on these Microsoft mixed reality headsets? When is that going to come to the HTC Vive? When is it going to come to the Oculus Rift? So it's always been kind of weird with a lot of these live video events in VR. A lot of it just has not been available for the PC VR market, but apparently it is available for the Microsoft mixed reality platform. So I'm definitely curious to hear if any of this is any good. Has anybody tried it? Has anybody watched portions of an NBA game on their Microsoft mixed reality headset? How did it work out? Etc., etc. Okay, so that's basically going to go ahead and wrap it up for this show. This, of course, has been episode 80 of the daily vlog series. I'm not sure if you can hear these dogs that are barking in the background, but I have a couple of pissed off dogs, my neighbor's dogs. They are yapping out of control. So I'm going to go ahead and get out of here. It is Friday, January 19th. That was episode 80. And everybody have a wonderful weekend. Remember, From Other Suns is free this weekend. I'm going to try to jump into it several different times. So if you happen to see somebody on your starship named VR Game Rankings, that's me, and I am the ship's captain. I will be controlling everything, and I will be bossing everybody around. No, I'm just kidding. I don't really play like that, actually. I usually just kind of kick it in the background and just try to have some fun. So anyways, if you guys get into From Other Suns, I might see you. But other than that, I will see everybody on Monday. So have a wonderful weekend. Take it easy. Later.